In the United States, among heterosexual women ages 15 to 49, approximately 1/5 or 19% of women with no prior births have difficulty getting pregnant after 1 year of trying. Also, approximately 1 in 4 or 26% of women in this group have difficulty getting pregnant and carrying a baby to term. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Erica Hoke is the infertile mother of 4 boys, a wife, and a best-selling author after struggling for years with undiagnosed endometriosis, uterine fibroids, PCOS, thyroid disease, factor V Leiden and MTHFR. Unable to participate in traditional IUI or IVF methods, she was able to get to the bottom of her infertility issues with continual changes to both her lifestyle and diet. And now she's fiercely committed to sharing her story and the stories of others as a means of hope to those who are still on the path of attempting to create the family of their dreams. And Hoke joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm delighted to be with you this morning to learn all about your journey with infertility. Great to be with you this morning, and thank you so very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
So, yeah, you're welcome, and I'm fascinated to begin our conversation by you just giving me sort of a 360-degree view of your story, because I know that you have 4 boys, and I know it's been an interesting journey getting to where you are today. So I'm wondering if you can tell me all about it.
Yeah, well, that was the spoiler alert, right? So I go by the handle infertile mom of 4, and that's confusing to some people, but the beginning of my story is a lot of dis-ease in my body, a lot of illness. I had quite a few reproductive diagnoses. One of them took me almost 12 years to get diagnosed with endometriosis. So when it came to trying to get pregnant, I knew that I might have a struggle, right? I had a whole handful of diagnoses, 7 to be exact. And my backup plan was always IVF. Well, I've got all these diagnoses, but, you know, if we have to, if push comes to shove, we'll go the IVF route. Everything will be fine, right? We'll get it done that way. And I went to see the IVF doctor and was told not only that I was not a candidate for IVF, but in his opinion that I would need donor eggs. I was 35 at the time. And it just kind of crashed my whole world, my whole plan, right? Because up until this point, that was always my plan B, my backup plan. So I had to take a minute. It was a really hard time because I thought, what am I going to do with this information? You know, am I going to accept this information? Am I going to proceed with this information? And what I decided to do was find out why my body was in so much disruption with all these different diagnoses. Now I've got at 35 diminished ovarian reserve, being told that I'm going to need donor eggs, can't do IVF, physically can't do IVF. What am I going to do to see if I can go a different route? And I looked into what causes these problems, the endometriosis, the fibroids, all the other things that I was experiencing, and what I could do to support my body. And if I could reverse it, basically, if I could turn that around. And what I found is, everything affects your fertility. And I went to a traditional Chinese medicine doctor of acupuncture, did acupuncture, Chinese herbs. I would have told you at the time that I was eating really well, meaning I had a lot of salads and didn't eat too much fast food, that sort of thing. But it still was basically a standard American diet. And I really needed to overhaul and clean that up and switch out my proteins for organic to get all those hormones out of my system that were interfering with my own hormones, my own reproductive hormones. So that led to my first pregnancy. Making those changes led to that first pregnancy. And then, lo and behold, 18 months later, we got pregnant with twins. And that was after being fired by the fertility doctor, because they said that there was absolutely nothing that they could do to help us. So our final son was born. There was a set of twins that I lost in between my live living twins. We lost a set of twins 2 years later. And then my last son was born at 43. And that was 7 years after I was told that I had less than a 1% chance of conceiving and that I would need donor eggs.
Erica, I'm curious listening to you. As to your definition of the word perseverance, and overcoming obstacles, and what does that mean to you? And secondarily, I'm also curious to get you to comment on sort of the emotional journey you went through as well.
Yeah. So perseverance means to me that you're going to stay the course regardless. You use the word obstacles, regardless of the obstacles that you're in your way. I was determined to persevere and eliminate any possibility of anything that was in my control. That's what I do with my program too, is I help coach women who are in similar situations, basically check all those boxes of maybe things that they don't think or wouldn't think or have been told, because that's frequently a problem, right? We're told that coffee doesn't, affect your fertility, or alcohol doesn't affect your fertility. Well, it might not affect everybody's fertility, but you can't get pregnant right now. So let's look at the reasons behind these things that could be affecting your gut health, which affects your hormone health. So I'm bringing this back to the perseverance of focusing on your goal and not what somebody tells you, one, that you can't do, or two, things that don't matter, right? Just because a doctor tells you that they can't help you get pregnant doesn't mean that you can't get pregnant. It just means that they can't help you, right? And so just having that laser focus of eliminating any obstacles in your path, that's my definition of perseverance. Yeah, well, anybody that has spent any time going through an infertility journey knows that it's a cycle of death every month, right? So you have this buildup of hope, that maybe this is going to be your month, and it's a 30-day cycle of death, grieving, rinse, and repeat. And that's very emotionally exhausting. It was very emotionally exhausting for me and my spouse. It's really hard when you're, I'll see on some forums and, Facebook groups and things like that, where, like myself, I was having chemical pregnancies all along because of another condition that I have called factor V Leiden, where the embryo can't implant. The roots die off because of blood clots before implantation. Therefore, you never get a positive pregnancy test. So I was having these chemical pregnancies all along the way. So I never knew if I could ever get a positive pregnancy test. And there's so many women out there in that same situation where nobody wants to have a miscarriage, but my goodness, like it would just be nice to know, can we get pregnant? Because until you get pregnant, you don't know if you can get pregnant. So it's very emotionally taxing. And then you have people who, in their best heart of hearts are trying to be helpful, but say the worst things ever to you. I'm sure you've experienced this in your journey in your life too. And it's just really hard to cope with the intrusiveness of people's questions or people's misguided attempts to provide hope in your situation. So it's a lot, we talk a lot about boundaries and how to have good boundaries, not in a mean way, but in a protective way, and scripting and things like that people can help themselves ahead of time to prepare for those. We're coming up to the holidays. I don't know when this will air, but when you're going through any gathering, any social gathering, where you have been, where there's an expectation that you might be pregnant, then you get a lot of intrusive questions. In my situation, I was working in an outside sales job and I had just gotten married. And so everyone wanted to ask me when the baby was coming, which was awful because I had to repeat myself sometimes multiple times a day and hold back tears. And maybe I had gotten my period that day and it was a lot. So that's kind of what my emotional journey looked like as we were going through, these different processes and this healing of my body.
Yeah, well, Erica, I always say that everyone's portrait of success is different, and the only level of expectation you have to meet is your own. Isn't that the truth?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to ask you, Erica, I'm curious to know your message to women about the importance of sort of valuing their health and how important that truly is.
Yeah, well, the first thing that I tell my clients is that no one is going to care about this more than you do. So there's, as I touched on before, there's a lot of dismissing of this doesn't matter, that doesn't matter from the reproductive endocrinology world, but they're also not providing any support for the most part, not that I've seen at least, in terms of dietary, guidelines, nutrition, and things like that. Yes, thank you. So the message is be empowered. Be empowered, take control. So many times I will see a client who is insistent that they've had every test done, that it's all negative, that they're good, because a doctor has told them that. Right? But there's things that are missed along the way. So women really have to know that if they want to have the outcome that they desire, they're going to have to take ownership of it, right? They're going to have to take ownership of what they're putting in and on their body. They're going to have to be empowered in their testing and kind of keep track and make sure that, check those boxes that those tests have been performed. Nobody's going to do that for you. They have to advocate for themselves. So the core of my program is empower and heal, empower and heal, it's important to learn to advocate for yourself. So that's my message to women, advocating for themselves. And I'm not anti-medicine in any way, shape, or form. My journey also included many surgeries. I wouldn't be here without the help of some really skilled surgeons. But it's important for people to take advantage of their own health.
Yeah,
take control of their own health. Yeah,
absolutely. I always say that we're the authors of our own destiny, right? So it's important to do that, right? So speaking about being an author, I know that you're a best-selling author. So Congratulations on that, and tell me about the book that you wrote that sort of details what we're talking about this morning.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. It was about this time last year, so we're coming up on our first year birthday of our book baby, right? So myself and 20 other authors wrote a chapter, and it's part telling our story, which different from what you can read in a Facebook post or something like that. We wanted to tell it from the standpoint of, here's my story, but here's what I wish I had known at this point. So each of the chapters is peppered with tips where we went back and we said, man, this is what was going on with me, but hey, this is what I wish I had known here instead of 2 years from now or 6 months from now or whatever. So it's part cautionary tale, part love letter. We provide, at the end of each chapter, there's a QR code where if you really resonate with that author's story, that you can scan that code and connect with them. There's resources in there. And so it's just a variety of stories. Some of them are things that they did in terms of natural fertility support. Some of them are egg donors. It's just a whole variety of women's stories. But we all said that if we if we wrote it just for one person, if it helped one person, that we would do the whole project all over again. It really was a passion for each and every one of us that contributed to the project.
And I'm sure there were some inspiring stories that you learned from along the way. I'm sure of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So humbling to head up the project too. It was really humbling. A lot of the women even said that they got a lot of personal healing from revisiting the story and kind of dissecting what their emotions were, like we talked about earlier. And so to that end, there were a few stories that we didn't have the ability to fit in for a variety of reasons. So in the first quarter of 2023, I have a follow-up book coming out that would be Infertility Success, More Stories of Help and Hope for Your Journey. That'll be coming out in the first quarter. And then some of the ladies, like myself, experienced some PTSD after going through infertility, which has to do with all the trauma, right? There's a lot of loss with the infertility journey. There's miscarriages, there's losses, earlier losses and things like that. There's failed procedures. And once you do get pregnant, then it's kind of like in society, there's a little magic wand waved over you, right? You're pregnant, all your dreams have come true, everything's fine. And it doesn't wash away all this trauma that you've experienced. So we want to normalize the full range of emotions that go with infertility and then motherhood. And there's a lot of PTSD fallout when you have a baby after going through infertility. So that'll be the book that's coming out in the second quarter. And I'm still accepting applications for that book as well.
Well, I have to tell you, Erica, no one will ever accuse you of not being ambitious, right?
Maybe so.
Yeah, absolutely. And Erica, I'm curious to get your definition and how you would define the term emotional courage. I'm fascinated to get your perspective there.
I don't know if I would call it emotional courage or resilience. And I don't know if I have an answer for you with that. I feel like some people are just wired to keep going in the face of every every adversarial situation. It reminds me of the quote that I read yesterday. The same water that softens the potato, the same boiling water that softens the potato hardens the egg, right? So I think it's how God made you. I don't think that it's a flaw in people not to have emotional resilience. And I don't think that it's something that you can be taught necessarily. I think it's your makeup.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Erica, when you turn on the news these days, reproductive rights is certainly a debate that we're having in society for women and equality in that sort of realm. So I'm wondering where you come down on the debate and how important you think it is to protect women's reproductive rights.
Well, I think that medicine has given us a lot of tools that may or may not be in the best interest of everyone involved. Just because we can do something doesn't necessarily mean that we should. And I think that it's a hard topic to talk about because it's so personal. So I would just say that I'm an advocate for things like snowflake babies, so embryo adoption, and advocating in areas that I can support. So if you're not familiar with embryo adoption, after this infertility process, many times couples are left with frozen embryos because they have had all the children that they want to complete their family, and now they have somewhere between 3 and 7, 10, I don't know how many, lots of embryos sometimes that they either have to pay for storage forever and keep them frozen, or there are women who now are adopting embryos. So they're not the genetic makeup of either parent. It's literally like having an adoption, except you're able to surrogate basically for your own child. And so I would advocate for programs like that that help women, have the children of their dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Erica, I'm also curious to ask you about any changes you want to see from the healthcare system perspective in order to make this journey easier for women.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I would love to see some standardization among the reproductive endocrinology community in other countries, in Europe, South Africa, places like that. There's a more consistent, that's the word that I was looking for. There's a more consistent approach to the care that women receive. And here I've seen, especially over the last 10 years, a lot of women pushed towards what I would consider advanced reproductive procedures like IUI or IVF before X, Y, and Z has been done, right? So we're just hopping over that. Testing is being overlooked. Some basic procedures are being overlooked. And it's just, they're being pushed into expensive reproductive procedures that then in the end fail because we can't plant in bad soil, right? We can't plant in soil that needs tending to. So these things have to happen. We might still end up in IVF or IUI, but we have to address these things first. And if we don't, it doesn't matter what you do over here. So I really feel like people are being taken advantage of in their most vulnerable state in this country because it's not like that in other countries. So I'd like to see some standardization. And this is why I preach advocacy so much as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And Erica, tell me the importance of having a support system around women as they go through this journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly private matter to the end that some people don't tell anybody. They don't tell their mother, they don't tell their sister, it's them and their spouse. They don't want to have any conversation. And so for those women that may or may not, for those women or those men even that might be listening to this program, what I would say to you is find a support community. I have one on Facebook. Find somebody, right, outside of your circle that you don't have to answer to, or that is in the same situation where you can have those conversations and you can decompress a little bit, because it's so important to connect with people that are going through the same kind of things that you're going through, because people really don't understand. They can't process that grief and that monthly loss unless they've been through it themselves. They can't process what it means to have failed procedures, be racking up all this debt, have the frustration of unanswered, unexplained infertility, without, experiencing it themselves. So I would really strongly urge people to find some kind of support, even if it's outside of their family and friend group, especially if they want to maintain that privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Erica, I want to end our conversation on a positive note. So tell me about your boys and how they've impacted your life and the legacy that you want to leave for them, both personally and professionally.
Yeah. So there's nothing more important to me than that my boys grow up with faith. I believe that that's the foundation of their future happiness. And so, aside from everything else, that's the most important thing to me. It's been a journey. Motherhood has been a journey, an unexpected journey. Let's just say that, much different than I ever could have imagined, and richer and sweeter in so many ways. But they're doing great. They're all healthy. And I've got a couple athletes. I've got an artist. We're just having a good time over here, watching their personalities develop and doing the best that we can.
Yeah, you must be one proud mother, I'm sure, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And Erica, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. My handle is infertile mom of 4, or my website is Erica Hoke. That's Hoke. Sometimes people hear Hope, which is, I've thought about changing my last name, but it's ericahoke.com. And I've got some free resources on there. Like I mentioned, I have a Facebook group that's free, that I provide resources and support. It's Infertility Empowered on Facebook. So you can reach me there.
Fantastic. Well, Erica, I have to thank you for trusting me to share your story of both inspiration, courage, and emotion. And I want to thank you for the advocacy work that you do on behalf of women in their battle with infertility. And I want to thank you for being here this morning. It's most appreciated.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.